Good morning, and thank you for checking out West Church Online, or whether you're watching on demand. We are so grateful that you have taken a few minutes out of the busyness of your day and your life to be with us here. We're sorry we had just a few seconds of technical difficulty, but we think we have solved those now. And we are going to talk about listening, which isn't that ironic that today's message is supposed to be about listening, and as soon as the words start coming out of my mouth, you can't hear me because our microphones weren't working. And so that's actually pretty ironic, and I'm sure will weave its way into our message this morning. If you're watching on demand, I invite you, after this message is over, to click on the link below. There is a video from Big Bang Theory, and it's so funny and such a great example of how we stink at listening to one another. And so we're going to talk about, it's the last Sunday in this message series, claiming our power, and baggage versus luggage. Luggage is moving forward, baggage is going back, and claiming the power that we have to move forward in our lives, and all the different ways that we can do that. And the ways that we can do that is by claiming the different powers of love, forgiveness, community, time. And today we are going to talk about the power of listening, which actually is one of the foundational powers that we have that will empower us to do all the others better. If you are new to our worshiping community, we would like to hear from you. We would love for you to text the word welcome to the number that you see on the screen, 704-343-8955. I'll read that one more time, 704-343-8955. Text the word welcome. We have a gift for you that we will send to you, and then you can choose how much you choose to opt into hearing from us and communicating with us and receiving our information. That's up to you. But we're glad that you're here. We hope that you find today meaningful and relevant. We're going to evaluate how we are as listeners, and then see why it's important to listen, and then think about how we can be better listeners as we move through our lives, and also see what Jesus had to say about it. Thanks. So if I were to ask, how good of a listener are you? Maybe we would be honest, and maybe we would say, well, I am good at it with these people or this situation, but in these circumstances, not so much. Or we may be totally delusional and say, oh, I'm a great listener all the time. Actually, listening is one of the most difficult things for human beings to do. We are not wired to listen, even though it's interesting. If we were to look in the mirror, odds are we would have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So what does that tell us? We should probably do more of this and less of this. Talking and listening, they are foundational to how we communicate. We live in an age of communication. That's what this time period in our existence is called, and we have all these different ways we can communicate. And so listening is actually more than just something we do audibly. We listen as we read, we infer, and we draw conclusions. So today's message is actually really important, that we claim our power of listening. Not only will it make us better people, better friends, better partners, better spouses, better parents, it will also make us just better human beings all the way around, and a better world. So I have a quiz I want you to take this morning, and I want you to, I found it from the internet, and so I want to read it to you because it's really just well done. And I want you to be really, really honest with yourself and answer these questions honestly. So number 1, when someone accuses me of something, if someone accuses you of something, I am quick to 1, review the facts and prepare a retort or a response, write the person off and ignore their claims, or ask clarifying questions. So when somebody accuses you of something, are you quick to review the facts and then prepare your response, write them off completely, like I'm done with you, and just ignore whatever it is that they're saying to you, or ask clarifying questions? Number 2, when someone tells me that I've hurt them, so when someone tells you that you have hurt them, I am quick to claim my own hurt, defend my actions, or affirm their feelings and apologize. So you're in a discussion with someone and they say to you, you've hurt me. So what are you quick to do? Are you quick to claim your own hurt, defend your actions, or affirm their feelings and apologize? And the last question, when I know that I am right, I am quick to state my case with evidence, shut down and withdraw emotionally, or be curious and patient while they explain their point of view. When I know that I am right, I am quick to state my case with evidence, shut down and withdraw emotionally, or be curious and patient while they explain their point of view. Have you heard that old philosophical question, like if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear the tree fall, does it really make a sound? You've got this forest, it's full of trees, a tree falls. Like, is there a sound when the tree falls? It's this huge, debate, and there are lots of different ways that you can look at it. The scientific answer is, as the tree falls, it makes sound waves, but if there's not an ear there to hear it, then there is no sound. How good are we at listening? So the quiz that we took just a few minutes ago, it's really important for us to be honest with ourselves about what kind of listeners that we are. I tended to think, which is why I chose this quiz actually, I would think that in lots of circumstances, I'm a pretty decent listener. And honestly, this is where my work life and my personal life are a little different. I try to bring my best, and I should bring my best to all relationships, right? But in my work environment, I employ the practices that I know that I need to employ to be a good leader, a good manager, a good pastor. But then, like when I'm at home or I'm with my family or my closest friends, I noticed when I took this quiz, I'm like, oh my gosh, I really stink at listening, because guess what? When someone accuses me, like someone accuses me of doing something, I am quick to come right back with what I have done. Like, let me tell you what I've done. And there's actually a different response, a better response to that maybe you chose, and that's how you respond to being accused of something. And we're going to look at those solutions to being a better listener a little later in the message. The second one is, and this one like stepped all over my toes. It was like, if someone tells you that you've hurt them, what are you quick to do? Now, again, in work, I'm like, I really do try to hear what they're saying and then apologize, because I don't ever want to hurt anyone. But in my personal life, like, I don't want to hurt anyone. And I think it hits too close to home that I am not more self-actualized than I am. And I do hurt those that I love. So when they start telling me that I hurt them, I can come back so fast with like, and let me tell you how you've hurt me. And then it just ends up being the cycle, and nothing good comes from that. Lastly, when I know I'm right, I don't shut down and withdraw emotionally. maybe that would probably be better. But I can state a case. My parents used to tell me I should have been a lawyer because I can argue with the best of them. What kind of listener are you? In order to listen, we have to have the ability to receive the sound. That's that philosophy of the tree falling in the forest, is if no one is there to receive it, then does it really happen? I want you to take a look at this next screen. This is our beloved Axel, and he is notorious for selective listening. Like last night, I was trying to get him to do something, and I whispered. Now, if we're walking and he hears something in the woods, he will turn his head, he'll jerk really fast, and he'll hear it. But last night, I was trying not to disturb everyone else, and I'm like, Axel, Axel, Axel. And you would have thought that there was no sound. The other day I was sitting at home in the office and studying, and he crawled up on the chair next to me, and I was trying to talk to him, and you see what he does. He like looks off to the side, and I feel like this is what he's thinking. I hear you, but this is like white noise. I hear you, but I'm not really listening. So this morning, I want us to think about and talk about, what does it mean to really listen? And then it is my hope that as we think through these things, as we go through the days ahead, we will actually employ them. And not just this like time period or this week, this month, but may they become lifelong practices. We live in a time in our nation that we are more polarized than ever. We have such strong beliefs and strong viewpoints on certain things that we're not willing to even listen to one another because I think it's out of fear, right? Like we're afraid that something that we hold true to, something that we believe in, will just be challenged. We were going to do a message series this fall around social justice issues, and the closer we got to doing that message series, and the more that my communication with you increased, I just realized that the whole point of the message series was to present both sides of an issue, whether it's immigration or gun control or abortion or equal rights for women or different ethnicities. And we were going to present both sides. And it made me remember back to when several years ago we did something similar, and we did a Sunday and we talked about gun control and gun violence. And honestly, prior to that message, like I had a very, very staunch stance on guns and had never touched one, didn't want one, etc. And then in preparation for the message, I deliberately had conversations and did research around the opposite view. And what I found was, even though I still hold true to my beliefs that, we don't need machine guns to go like shoot Bambi because there's just no point in that. Like I did see the other side and the other perspective of, going to the shooting range for fun. And there are people that kill animals for their food and that type thing. And so even though it didn't change my mind, I was willing to listen. And I said that at the beginning of the message. I'm like, okay, here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to present both sides. I said, and please, don't email me by 12 o'clock, and tell me how I'm wrong. I said, if you disagree with whichever side, that's fine. Like, that's what I'm here for. I'm not ever here to just spoon feed you just information. I am here to present it and then you to process it with the presence of God inside of you, God that dwells inside of you, and figure out where God is calling you to believe and act and stand and respond. And I said, so please just hear me and hear both sides. And it was so interesting, like everybody except one family listened to the message, and there was no flack except for one email that I got before I even got home. and it said something about that I had used a video in the message from CNN, and that CNN always gives erroneous news, and I'm pretty sure they all give erroneous news at some point, but they couldn't hear anything else I said because I used one video from CNN. That's just one example of things that we all do in our lives all the time. When we listen to other people, we're not listening to truly see and understand, or typically we're not listening to see and understand and try to discern and empathize. We are listening to see if we agree or disagree. We are listening so that we can then respond. We're listening out of our pride and out of our egos and out of our own bias. Rarely do we listen with a blank slate. So this morning I want us to talk about what that looks like. So the first thing that we have to do when we listen is truly actually do that. We have to do the process of listening. That means that we hear what they are saying. And as we find our brains starting to go to different thoughts and different ideas or formulating responses, we need to just pause and listen. When God was speaking to Moses in the Hebrew scriptures before he was leading the people to the promised land, in that whole process, Moses would get distracted, and he would deal with all the difficulties that the people were facing. It would wear him down, and he was finding that he just no longer felt connected with God and that he was hearing God. And so God comes to Moses and says, listen, I want you to be still and know that I am God. Be still and listen to me. So when we're listening, one of the first things we have to do is we have to be still. We have to still our minds and our actions and be fully present in that moment. The word for that in today's age is mindfulness. We are mindful of being right there, and so we listen. Listen is one of the most important words that comes through this whole idea of listening and understanding. We have to be still. We have to stop all the things going through our minds, and we have to truly hear. The second thing we need to do is we need to be silent. We need to not be thinking oh, this is what I'm going to say right back. Remember when I gave that quiz, and when someone tells you that you've hurt them, that your immediate response is to say back, okay, well, this is how you've hurt me. That's not being silent. And if someone says something to you or accuses us of something, to immediately come back with a declaration or a defense, that isn't listening and being silent. Being silent consists of hearing truly what they're saying, and then instead of formulating a response, after we have processed it, then we go to the next part of this process of listening. We listen and we be silent, we still our thoughts and our minds, and then the next word that I want you to remember is that we understand. And we try to process what is going on in what they're saying. Instead of making a declaration, we ask questions. Okay, I hear you. One of the things that Tom and I figured out early on in our relationship, trying to form a new relationship as adults with past and lots of different factors coming in, is that we needed to learn how to truly listen to one another. He was way better at it, believe it or not, than me. And I like to be right. And because of my woundedness and my pain, then, there were so many defenses up. I never listened to understand. I listened so I could prove myself right, so that I could have a stronger defense. But understanding means discerning, truly hearing, and processing, like, what do they mean? What are they trying to say? The way that we do that is by asking questions. When's the last time someone said something to you, or they were trying to have a conversation with you, and it's not going well, and they feel like you're not listening, and so instead of like it becoming a heated conversation, you just pause and say, okay, help me hear you. What do you mean? What are you trying to say? Or take something that they've said that came across harshly and rephrase it, and maybe even say, this is what I'm hearing, is this what you mean? If we'll actually take the time to ask questions and not make declarations or accusations back, we'll find that we actually get somewhere. But we get so caught up in our pride and our egos and wanting to be right, like we don't stop to ask those questions. One of the things that I love about the United Methodist Church is that we do things very intentionally, Methodist, methodical. And so we have this thing every 4 years that's called General Conference, and we are a global denomination. And so there are Methodists from all over the world that come together every 4 years and vote on our polity and the way that we do things. And if you've heard anything about the Methodist Church in the news lately, you understand that right now we are in the middle of a process of there are churches leaving our denomination to form a new one, and then there's like sects of that denomination that are breaking off. It's a mess, actually. But one of the beautiful things that happened that we didn't actually go on and apply to being like Jesus is that when we come together at General Conference, and you can watch this, it's live streamed, and it's such a powerful thing. It's called Holy Conferencing. So when people come to the floor and they make a recommendation or something, and they try to, present the sides for an issue or the sides against, like after all those speeches are given to the floor, there's this thing called holy conferencing, Christian conferencing. And in that time and in that space, people listen. And they're in their small groups together, and they're responding by asking one another questions. Like, what do you mean? How do you feel? How does this relate to you? What's this like in your world and your life? Now, whether or not we actually do anything with the answers that come in that time, I'm not sure. I don't necessarily agree with forming two different denominations, but I also think we're not willing to think and let think and interpret Scripture in a broader range. So I'm just tired of everybody arguing about it, honestly. But if we would employ the same things that Jesus did, man, our world would be such a better place. In my prep for this message, I looked for like what Jesus said about listening, and he didn't have like this special phrase. There are a couple of times that he says, all those who have ears to hear, let them hear, or listen carefully to these words. So listening was important, but the way that I think we understand where Jesus stood on this is the way that he lived his life. Like, look at what he did. He had conversations with all different kinds of people. We never find Jesus surrounded by people just like him. We find him with the scorned of society, the people that no one else trusted. We find him with the religious leaders and the zealots. We find him with everyone. And we see these dialogues and these conversations that he has. It's interesting to note, and I think this is one of the most pivotal things that we can walk away with today, is that Jesus did not come to accuse. Jesus came to reconcile. The way that Jesus listened, it was not accusatory. He would listen and process and understand, and then seek reconciliation. So in the scientific world, in the academic world, we listen and then we are silent and we process it. We understand. And the last part of this 4 words that I want you to remember, listen, silent, understand, the last part of it is evaluating. Like first we really hear, then we're quiet, and we really try to think about what are they trying to say. It is, in that moment, everyone's perspective is their own reality. And when people are saying things, they believe what they are saying to be true. So out of respect and out of being a decent human being, like we need to listen to them and understand. And then we do evaluate it. Now, this is not to say that we have to agree with everything that everyone says. That's not how this works. But in order for us to get along as fellow human beings, and in order for us to live in a peaceful world, we have to listen and try to see what it is that they are trying to communicate, and then try to figure out how we can bring reconciliation and respect into that conversation so that we can hear them and then move forward. And then the last part is how we respond. So how do you respond? I have a picture of a cute little animal, and sometimes I'm afraid this is our response. If it isn't exactly what we want to hear, or we evaluate it and it just isn't the stance that we have, or it's different from what we believe, we just shut them out completely. It's like putting our fingers in our ears. And, sometimes if you put your fingers in your ears, you can still hear them. So my thing is to do this, and then I'll either just start talking over you really loudly, or I'll go, no, 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 like that. So I don't have to hear you. There are words, one of the wisest kings of all time, Solomon, wrote these words in the book of Proverbs, and I want you to hear these 2 verses this morning. The first one: a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only. And number 2, an answer before he. It is his fault. Answer before he ears. It's on them. It's on them. It's working on, the power of listening for a while. So you would think that it. I thought I was, and then last night we went to the Charlotte, and so we get there. Game started at 7, or was it postpones the game for 30. We're anxious because pumpkin on Saturday nights. We were debating, like, and then this gentleman came about my message. Right? So I was thinking about, just having all this kind of stuff. Than me. And not really. It was an wanted to retort but I noticed I'm just going to be quiet. I wanted to say something, but just I didn't want him to think like if this goes on for and so we were. I said, "Well, I'm a preacher. Tomorrow's sort of like." He said, "Oh, United Methodist." How do you know? The conversation, faith, and fundamental, and we just had interesting conversation. Interesting conversation. But I think because like I followed Tom's lead and insert my opinion, I just listened. It isn't always. It isn't always. It's also what we receive their words. Their words. We receive the words that are listen and be silent and receive their words in the context. Active listening skills. Previous conversation. Offensive about our stance. We don't see eye to eye church and faith, and no one left angry. No one other been polarizing conversation. Our world needs to be in a message early. We need to be a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. Hear it. To them from a place of peace. Listen. He is a spiritual thought and what's happening. We mentioned this on Friday. Line for hospitality. Now, at the high school, I don't know how at the high school, I don't know how we have COVID friendly, etc. for folks to some of our new worship are right. You see D-Row. You see D-Row. and the rice and the email this week. He said, "Do just snacks when what if we actually give them something and some sugar and some sugar?" Listen, if I thought it into this and by giving you these folks worship with D Row to listen some words of hope, and even though he has no training, by me weekly. Amazing team of people, like they've heard over the past their words, and he responded about being right or winning our viewpoint across. It's our job to see Jesus in all people and to hear where they followers of Jesus all those things. Gracious God, we have the ultimate example of a phenomenal listener. And if we look at the different ways that Jesus had conversations with people, even if they were accusing him or saying something that was so off base, like he would always respond out of reconciliation and love. Now, sometimes those were hard conversations, but never out of anger or just trying to be right or prove a point. God, help us be better listeners. Forgive us of the times that we fall short, and help us be your ears for a world that is hurting and as is in need. And may we respond in reconciliation and peace. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. So next Sunday is going to be different, and we're actually going to be doing something together in a dynamic kind of way. So I really invite you to check us out online next Sunday, and it's going to be fun. So thanks for being here.